Next up, we have Darren Berkowitz. He was co-founder of TeleSign and the 2018 USC Alumni Entrepreneur of the Year. He's one of three founders of TeleSign, and TeleSign was involved in developing online security software out of Marina Del Rey. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Darren. And they sold the company in 2017, and since leaving TeleSign, he's focused on investing and advising early stage companies and serves as an innovator in resident at the USC Startup Garage. Was I correct on that, Darren?
That's it.
Great. Well, welcome. Thanks for being on.
Nice to be here.
And so I wanted to have you tell us about TeleSign and your experience there. I was really fascinated when we got introduced to each other. One about what TeleSign did and your exit from TeleSign, and that story. It's I think very insightful.
Yeah, great. And thanks for having me. So we started TeleSign in 2005, and I like to say this is pre-iPhone to give you a sense of when this was. Essentially, we had a premonition that internet security was going to become really big. In 2005, it wasn't. We don't need it. People don't want it. So our core product was two-factor authentication. So when you get a text message with a code and you enter it back in the website, now you pretty much do it everywhere on your banks, on your email provider. That was us. And then all of the ancillary technology around that. So it took a while. Like most startups, we struggled in the beginning, and about 4 years, and then we got some big breaks and pretty much signed all of the major players and grew the company. We had, when we sold it in 2017, over 300 employees, over $100 million a year in revenue, and sold it, which was really nice. So it was a 12-year overnight success.
That's great. And what, so you're involved with the USC Startup Garage a lot right now. You're helping startups, and tell us about that. What the
USC Startup Garage is fantastic. It's a really kind of unknown secret here in LA. It's an accelerator in Marina Del Rey on USC's information science campus. And it's one of the only accelerators that takes no equity, no money. It's an academic institution, and you get all of the benefits of an accelerator: mentors, office space, connections, including connections into the engineering school, which the USC's engineering school is one of the best in the country. So it's fantastic. It's a great place for entrepreneurs that are sort of wanting to start their business to apply. So I'm really happy. It gives me energy to be around early stage entrepreneurs, and you have to be a little bit crazy to be one of those.
Yeah. No, and that's how we met. I like being around that startup scene as well, and just the energy, and the risk people are taking, and the ideas that you hear about are fascinating. And yep, that's great. So, and what's your role with the Startup Garage? Are you advising some startups then?
Yeah, so I'm what's called an innovator in residence. So basically, our job is to help the teams. So advise with them, work on their goals, fundraising, product development, be a shoulder to cry on, kind of everything that we can do to help these companies get to the next level. Obviously, like early stage is just tremendously hard. It's every stage of business is really hard, but early stage, there's very few people that believe. And everyone says, "Oh, this is a great idea," and then you ask them for money, you ask them for help, and they, "Oh, no." So it's a very it's a tough place to be, and it's nice to be in an environment when you're surrounded by like-minded people and everyone's kind of really working on the same goals.
Yep, that's great. And before today, we were talking about too. I'm just amazed how in Marina Del Rey, the tech scene there, Marina Del Rey, and actually I'm in El Segundo, you're in this area as well. The technology companies around this area, and these resources as well, like this startup garage. I'm fascinated by that, and every time I turn around, there's something new I didn't know about too.
Yeah, I mean, that area has just boomed. We moved to Marina Del Rey in 2010. And at the time we got like $1.15 a square foot, was really not well known. But now, I mean, Silicon Beach it's great. I mean, it's an amazing part to be, but it also has a downside of things are just tremendously expensive.
Yeah.
You're fighting over talent. There's a downside of all that activity too.
But it sounds like even if you go to Waco, Texas, you're still fighting over talent.
Yeah, I mean and especially now in the pandemic, the fight is worldwide for talent. So
yeah,
it's tough.
It's tough. Yep. So are you currently working on any new startups, getting involved in any new companies?
So yeah, I'm doing my own investing and then also getting back into the startup game. We started a company called homefunds.com, which essentially makes minority equity investments in people's homes, which is capitalizing on, prop tech, the prop tech space of, real estate is kind of one of the last oldest industries to get into the 21st century. And there's a lot of innovation happening in prop tech. So I'm excited about that.
That's great. That's great. So yeah, and going into 2022, what areas do you think there's a lot of potential development and that you're excited about? If you're talking to an entrepreneur going or looking to get into a different industry, what areas are you really excited about?
I think as Nolan mentioned, I mean, the crypto blockchain world is just unreal. I don't think anyone really has a sense of how our lives are going to change because of this. I've been particularly interested in DeFi, which is decentralized finance, which essentially allow people to loan money to other people without any intermediary with very minimal risk. It's really the consequences for like financial services and insurance are just unreal. But I think to your question, I think we had talked about your fortunes can change really quickly for good or for bad. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's always been, you have to pivot on a dime, you have to be adaptable, you have to change. That's always been true. But I think now it's almost hyper. It's just amazing how much value can be created. I think it's probably mostly technology. And then I think also just, especially in the consumer world, people are somewhat fickle. Things change really quickly. Preferences change, and now there used to be switching costs with things. And now you can switch, you can move, you can do things like instantaneously. Whereas before it was hard to make shifts so quickly.
Yep. That's interesting. And yep. And then in terms of the DeFi, are you seeing some startups getting involved in that area? And going back to Nolan talking about the crypto and NFTs, and I hear a lot of people talking about this too. It's kind of like the internet in 1995. It's a little difficult to use. You've got to be a little bit of a computer geek to set up the modem and get on to the internet and know what's going on. And I can see that right now, buying an NFT isn't exactly easy yet, but it's coming along. And, do you see a lot of opportunity for people, not even the launching an NFT, but, doing the software behind that to make these getting on blockchain easier and DeFi as well, getting involved in that. There's a lot of development I would that would need to take place, and do you see some startups on that?
For sure. I mean, crypto, DeFi, all of this is really like geek land now. So I read an article that there's like really only 100,000 people doing, true DeFi right now, which is tiny. So like there's going to be huge opportunity for companies and startups to help like bring this to the masses. make it, easy for grandpa to understand, all of these things that like where it doesn't really impact yours and I daily life, but it will. And actually, this is where I actually think established companies who are able to change will be able to take advantage of this, in addition to startups that will come along and find innovative ways of doing that as well.
Okay. And then even outside of DeFi, like, existing companies, I mean, do you see that opportunities with crypto? I mean, when you say there's opportunities, what are you thinking there? Like a move to payment, accepting crypto as payment for online exchanges?
Yeah, I think accepting crypto as payment, and essentially the ability to move money around the world with no fees instantaneously. Now if I want to send money to the UK, I have to go to my bank. I have to fill out a form. It goes to a central, it has to get converted, it has to have an exchange rate. I have to know, there's all kinds of know your customer, all kinds of things where is literally with the click of the button, I can move money almost for free around the world instantaneously, with no middleman in a secure way.
Right.
It's pretty unreal to think about. And there's also obviously security, regulation, governmental issues here that'll like play out. But I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. No, and it's funny you mentioned that. When I was getting into crypto at first, I was nervous, reading about some of the security issues and stuff. But like Coinbase has the two factor authentication set up. You can use the authenticator on your phone to log in, pretty secure. And I went to my bank I was like, yeah, this looks secure. I went to my bank to turn that same functionality on through Bank of America. And surprisingly, they don't offer they've got two-factor authentication. They'll send you a text, but they don't have an authenticator option. And so these crypto companies are, I think, ahead of a lot of the banks on some of the security issues.
In some ways they are, and obviously this is my old world. In some ways they are, but then on the flip side, the government regulation and FDIC and all the protections you have doesn't exist in the crypto world currently. So there's some catch up and some, how does the government play in here? My sense of it is existing banks and companies will find ways to adapt in addition to startups about this, but it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Great. So what's on top of your mind, going forward? What are you working on? What are you excited about for 2022? And then any key lessons as well coming out of the pandemic for startups that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think, back to some of the points that were made earlier, I think, at least in my view, no one really knows what's going to happen with the economy. Everyone kind of has the best guess, and smart people differ. I think the important thing to think about, especially in an economy right now where every asset is high, real estate is high, is how can your business thrive no matter what happens? If we enter 2022 and we have supply chain issues and things continue to overall do well, can you thrive? But obviously most people remember 2008. And even though it does seem like a distant memory, like those kind of scenarios, funding dries up, stocks drop, the world changes. So I think it's important for people to spend some time thinking about, if the world does change, will my business be able to, make it through that?
Okay. And then are you talking to an entrepreneur, does that change your advice on, let's say somebody approaches you on, say, I'm thinking about doing a startup. Will that change your advice, whether to go for it or not at this point?
No. Most of the advice I give to startups, and I'm a little bit biased, is to focus on profitability, making money, all of the like traditional business metrics, rather than, try and grow as quickly as possible, try and raise a whole bunch of money, go to series A, B, C, and just grow. which can work, but if things do change, that doesn't work anymore. But what always works is if you have a product and you're making money and you're keeping expenses in line, and that works even in a bad economy and even without external investors. And obviously, like I said, people that lived through 2008 and 2001 saw this. The companies that were able to make it through weren't, there were a lot of companies that didn't because they didn't have the ability to weather a storm.
Yep. Yeah, no, and actually looking back too, I mean, there's some very successful companies that have been started in down economies too. There's some opportunity that pops up there. And so it's, yeah, and I like your idea, just go back to the basics. If you're profitable, can weather the storm, you don't depend on investment to keep going.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see that, especially when things are good. There's the famous, I think your viewers can find it, the Sequoia memo, RIP good times, that they published in 2008 was a memo to their portfolio companies about what to do when you're, facing a downturn. But in reality, I don't think no one really knows. And obviously the last few years have taught us we really don't know. So you kind of have to,
right.
To Nolan's point, we have to train people, especially children, to be adaptable and flexible. And I think that his point around the education was very true. We didn't train the last few generations on probably the most important skill is flexibility and adaptability.
Right. No, and actually, and I'll wrap it up here shortly, but that topic has been in the back of my mind for some time. And, going through law school and undergrad and everything, I believe in education, but is the system fundamentally need to change? I believe so. And now the fact that we've got an answer to almost any question in our pocket on our phone, we don't need to memorize things anymore. It's how do we analyze that information and use that to make good decisions going forward.
Yeah. There's no information deficit. And I think even if you don't really know what's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years, knowing that kids are probably going to need different skills than we're teaching them now in school. So I think there's a lot there.
Yep. I agree. So on that note, we'll leave it. And Darren, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join us today on the webinar and sharing your insights. And it's been a pleasure meeting you, and we'll get together for lunch at the Habit here soon too.
Definitely. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Darren.